Hello, everybody. I'm Dean Karen Panetta. I'm also the professor in electrical and computer engineering at Tufts University, and I am the 2019 president of IEEE-HKN Eta Kappa Nu. So welcome for being here. I'm also the vice president of IEEE Systems Man and Cybernetics membership and student activities. So again, I'm Karen Panetta. Welcome. And today I want to help you. I'm assuming that some of you are already graduate students and that we're going to teach you how to survive and thrive. So as a dean, I have the opportunity to see the insides, talk to students, know what faculty are going through as well as students. And I see all the problems that come up. And sometimes I say, wow, if students just knew this information could prevent a lot of anxiety. So our sponsor today is Tufts University School of Engineering, my institution, the IEEE Eta Kappa Nu Grad Lab, and Eta Kappa Nu, and IEEE Systems Man and Cybernetics Society. So thank you all for sponsoring us. And so just a little background, what is IEEE Eta Kappa Nu? It's the largest honor society for IEEE in all IEEE fields of interest. It has over 200,000 members from over 250 chapters around the world. And it's a lifelong designation. So it's not like every year you have to pay a membership fee. Once you're inducted, you are a member for life. And our HKN hosts a variety of professional development, and we're a community, grad school of graduate students, undergraduates, professionals, and you can be inducted as a student, or you can be inducted as a graduate student, or you can be inducted like I was as a professional once you get into industry. So to learn more, here's a bunch of links, hkn.org. And if you're not a member and you're just a grad student from Tufts right now and interested, get involved. And it's another way for you to reach out to broader communities and get networked with other professionals in your discipline. So today I'm going to talk about expectations for you and your faculty that you're going to be working with, how important communication is and some of the pitfalls along the way, funding, because I know everybody wants money, and I'll talk a little bit about finding a job and internship and how to appropriately ask for reference letters or how to get what you really need sometimes to achieve your next level. So let's go on here. So I do a lot of humorous type of things, but I think that the first thing you need to know is being a graduate student, the way you got there is very different than being an undergraduate. So if you happen to be an undergraduate and you got financial aid, somebody just said, here, you're a great student, here's money, go get a degree. And nobody ever had any other expectations other than you keep maybe a certain grade level and you stay out of trouble. Well, graduate school is very different. In graduate school, you're given money usually by a department or a faculty member that has a grant that they wrote and that they got the money for. So that means it's a job. And when you apply, there's no graduate, normally undergraduate team of undergraduate admissions officers look at your essays and everything else. In graduate school, if the faculty are putting their money behind you, they are reviewing your application. So when you get funded, it's a job. And it's very different than the undergraduate financial aid. So in this little comic here, I love these comics. It's essentially the first thing is, when you get this job, you need to understand what the expectations are. So here, say, oh, well, when do you expect me to be in the lab? And the professor says 6 a.m. to midnight. And and this is true. Stipends usually only cover 20 hours a week, which means now you might say, well, I'm doing research. So if I can't get my research done 20 hours a week, what do I do? Well, we all know the truth is yes, if you're a teaching assistant, 20 hours a week is what they can give you for workload. But when you're a research assistant, you're really trying to advance your own research, which means if you don't get it done in 20 hours a week, you don't graduate. So it's kind of a unfair type of thing that you're really not being paid 100% for all the hours you're going to put in. But you are getting some perks. You are getting free tuition if you are being funded. So everybody has expectations. You have expectations, your faculty members have expectations, your advisor, and your family, right? So your family is like, hurry up, get out, make money. Well, how's school? Why can't you come home every night? Why can't you call me every night? And why aren't you available when I call? So day one, I want you to think about being proactive in reaching out for information from pretty much everybody. So if you're being funded, the first person you should reach out to is the person who's funding you. And it's okay to ask, I'm a funded research assistant. Can you tell me which grant I'm being funded out of? Is it your grant? Is it a department stipend? Where's my funding coming from? And what's the project? Because the project is like a job description. It'll say you will do research developing new neural network architectures to solve world hunger. And that's what you need to work on. If you then come back and say, well, you know what, I really want to do power engineering, and then that's something I'm interested in. Your advisor who's funding you does not have to fund what you're specifically interested in. So be careful about this, because people don't understand that you are not a free agent, that you can switch advisors if they're funding you. So if the job description changes, it's like going to a new company and say, well, you know what, you don't want this job, then you need to go either find a new job inside the company, or you need to go out and find a new company. So please know that up front if you're being funded. The other thing is, if you're a teaching assistant, we want you to be proactive. Don't wait for the first day of class to reach out to the professor. That's a bad thing to do, because that means that, well, I'll just wait, or I'll wait for them to come to me. No. They love students who come and say, dear professor, I'm your teaching assistant. How can I make your life easier? And we're going to talk about some of the things you can ask them so that you can understand what the expectations are. Now, if you can't be somewhere and you just, you need to tell your boss, just like if you were in industry, if you don't show up for work or your internship, right, your paid internship, you would say, I can't come in today because I'm sick, or I'm going to be out, I'm going to have an appointment, I'll be in later. Not showing up in the lab and just being absent, coming in anytime you want, or is okay as long as you have an agreement with your advisor. I'll be in between this or that time. But if you just don't show up and a professor walks in the lab and is like, where is this person? I'm paying them. They're not going to be very happy about that. I walk in my lab on Friday, and if my students are there, I will be texting and say, well, I'm here because you said you needed my help. Where are you? And then they all say, oh, I'm out to lunch, and then they come in. So that's okay, but make sure you're in distance to show up and be honest about it. So be careful about, I'm working from home today. Now with COVID, we're all working from home. My entire lab is working from home, which is fine. But if I need something and I text you or I email you and I don't hear a response for hours and hours, that doesn't say you're working from home. That says you're off doing something else. Because if you were in my lab, you'd be available. So be careful about how you work your hours and be honest about it. The other thing is, is summertime. I know that students, with summertime, we're all down. We all want some downtime in the summertime. But be careful, because your advisors, if they're funding you, if they're funding you to work 20 hours a week, and you go and you take a 4-week vacation, and you can't say, well, I'm working from wherever I'm going. Some students do that. Say, well, I'm going off to California to visit my relatives. I'll be working from there. The same thing. We know what you're doing. If you're not available, if you're going to go on vacation, go on vacation, and let them know I won't be available, but also make sure that it's okay. Because if you leave, if you're a teaching assistant and you leave and they say, well, wait a minute, you didn't turn in the grades, that professor is going to have a million grades, lab grades, homework grades not completed, and they're going to be attacking the professor. And that's usually when the dean has to kick in and say, where's the student's grades? The parents are calling. So let's talk about graduation, right? Because you always think about when you come in, you have expectations again on when you're going to graduate. All right. So PhDs typically are 4, 5, 6, 7, could be 7 years, depending on what major you're in. I try not to torment my students beyond 5 years. So, and when they're ready, they're ready. They get out in 4. I've had some get out in 2 that were just from industry, were absolutely fabulous. So thesis-based, anything, any degree thesis-based does not have a definite timeline of like, you will be done, because you don't control when you're done. So I have students say, well, I published a paper, therefore my advisor has to let me out. And the advisor's like, no, I don't. And so that, the student thinks that, well, because I met this milestone, you're going to let me out because that's the normal. That's what I heard. Don't go by hearsay. Go by what you ask your advisor. How long does it take for a typical master's student to graduate that does a thesis? In my institution, I have a 2-year time limit on when students should finish. So that means that you should be done in 2 years. If your advisor is not happy, you could be around for 3, you could be around 4. You want to make sure that you have a good understanding of what it's going to take to get there. Now, most master's programs today, because so many students want to go out and make money, are all becoming lecture course based. So you take your 10 courses, you're done, right? So you get, and you know that you're going to get a grade at the end of the semester as long as you fulfill the requirements. So those get out on time because you know how many courses you've registered for. As long as you pass them, you're done. Where project-based courses or theses really, projects, they'll still let you out. You have can still get out, but theses are really the tricky thing because it's not just dependent on your advisor, it's dependent on your committee. So based on, you could have 3 people on your master's committee, you might have 4 on your PhD committee. That's a lot of people to have to satisfy. So we're going to talk about some strategies today on how you can make sure, regardless of which programming you're in, that the questions you can ask. And then your family pressure. One of the first things that people used to say to me is, well, aren't you graduating yet? When are you going to graduate? When are you going to graduate? And after a while, it was just like, you just watch people. So as a dean, I know you never ask a student, when are you going to graduate? I'll say, how long have you been here? And then I'll just, 5 years. Okay. We don't ask because it hurts. It hurts because, and the other thing is sometimes when you start, I often say, if I had known this, would I have done this? And the answer is yes, you would have. So, you have high expectations. You're going to get through you have to know that you are going to get through your programs, and I'm going to help you get there. So let's talk about the next thing. So as a dean, all the statistics I'm giving you today are from the years of experience that I've had. So these aren't national statistics because nobody publishes on what these issues are. Nobody tells you the dirty secrets behind the academic doors of administration or with faculty, but I'm letting you in on these secrets. So as the dean, I see all the issues between any faculty member and graduate students. And I also see the issues between graduate students and graduate students. And I can tell you that 80% of all the disagreements that come before me are some sort of misunderstanding or assumptions either by the graduate student or the faculty, or just a total mismatch in communication. So I always say rule number 1, don't assume, that you know what the rules are. Yes, you have to read your graduate handbook for the policies on, when you have to take what test, when, things like that. But always when you're going to have meetings with your advisor, ask questions, go in prepared with questions about your program and write it down and confirm it with the faculty. So the first question I just told you to ask is, I'm funded. Am I on a grant? Which grant? Which agency? Is it the Army? Is it the National Science Foundation? And what's the topic? Sometimes they'll even show you some of the scope of the projects. Are there papers that I can read that are previous work in this area that you have? So you can always ask questions, and faculty will appreciate that because it means that you're interested and that you're looking for ways to engage. All right, so when I say explicit feedback, you need to say to the professor, after the end of the meeting, does this meet, am I on progress with meeting your expectations? Are there other things that you wish I had done that you didn't see? Did I understand what you were asking me to do? Did I accomplish those things? A lot of faculty do not like to tell students you're not cutting it. They don't like to say, they'll dance around it. So I'll give you an example of an interview question I got. I came from industry, and one of the interview questions I got as a young graduate student was, my research that I was being interviewed, and somebody said, somebody had to warn me, say, oh, they don't like your research. They don't understand what VLSI testing is or the value of it, because if the chip is broken, you just throw it away. And I was like, yeah, but my research is telling you when it's broken. So how do you know if it's broken, and when do you throw it away? And so when I got in the room with one of these interviewers, I asked this question. I said, so what do you find deficient about my research? And the faculty member said, that's a direct question. And I was like, I want a direct answer. If I'm to know and improve myself, I'd like to know what you find deficient. And he couldn't answer it. What he said was, well, I just think the candidate that is appropriate for this position should have, a strong mathematical formulations and proofs of blah, 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 of concepts and things like that. And it's like, dude, I work in industry and I've got a real world application that's the world's first digital twin technology. And back then we didn't call it that, but it was just like, but he couldn't answer it. So be careful if you don't get that clean answer, you know that you've already know a little bit about them. They're like, okay, they're not comfortable being honest with me about stuff. So you're gonna have to prod a little bit differently with them to get that expectation. What you don't want is you don't want to come up upon your qualifying exams, have them tell you everything's fine, and then you think you went in, you did a good job, and then they say, hey, you know what, this program's not for you. That to me is the cop-out. And you can read my blog about death to the PhD qualifier. It's a cop-out. It's really a way sometimes to say, I don't really want to tell you what I think about your real work, but I need a clean way to exit you out of the program because I don't want to support you anymore. And that's something that's kind of nasty. So you can head that off of the pass by always being one step ahead of them. And we'll talk more about that in our How to Train Your Advisor seminar. So the next one is ambiguity really does equal disaster. All right, so here's the question. You will be ready to graduate when you have fill in the blank for your program, X number of papers. All right, so what's that mean to you? Well, does that mean 1 paper, 2 papers? Let's say it's 3 papers. All right, that number is 3. So the question you need to ask, where's the ambiguity here? Well, what does you will have a paper mean? Because I can write up a paper right now, right, and hand it to you. So here's my paper. You need to ask, is it a conference paper or a journal paper? Is it a balance of both? Because if I get 3 papers and they're all conference papers, you don't want your advisor to come back and say, oh, too bad, one of them, you don't have any common journal papers, I can't graduate you. You need to know what stage or status does that paper have to be in? Is it just submitted? Is it just, like I said, I typed it up, I handed it to my faculty? Is it submitted to a conference or a journal? Does it have to be accepted with revisions, which means there are changes that need to be made, or maybe more simulations or more mathematics, or something has to be done that requires you to do more research? And does all the revisions have to be completed? So in other words, if I've got work to do when I walk out the door, is your faculty member going to hand this paper off to somebody else? And be careful, because if you say, yeah, go ahead, let my junior members in the lab finish it, guess what? Your name could come right off that paper and be tacked on the end, even though you were in first place. And then you come back and say, how did I lose my first authorship? And your faculty member said, well, you didn't do the revisions and somebody else had to pick up your work. That's their prerogative. So these are the types of things you want to ask about. The next one, does it have to be published? Now you might say, all right, so it's a published paper. Well, you got to be careful, because some publishers, some journal publications, for instance, an IEEE, might take up to 6 months to get reviews back. Now, if you're, 6 months away from graduation and you're all of a sudden putting all these papers out, you don't want to be sitting there twiddling your thumbs waiting for these reviews to come back. And if they come back with revisions, that means they got to go through more of a review process. So conferences are more, just have more of a definite timeline, because you'll get an acceptance or rejection. So you'll know, because the conference has to happen. So be careful. This is what I mean by ambiguity. Because when students say, I thought I had published 3 papers, and they told me they had to be all journal papers and conference papers don't count, that hurts. And you're like, if I had only known that. The next one is structuring your communications. So, the professors, I want you to do X, and and sometimes you're going to disagree. Now, my students, as they get involved into the program and they become real experts at what we're doing and in depth, they can't disagree with me. I want them to disagree with me. That's how I know when it's time for them to graduate, is when they disagree and they're right. But at the same time, if you're new starting out and I ask you to do something explicitly, like, oh, you know what, I want you to go implement this algorithm and try it out and tell me, how it compares to our algorithm, you need to do it, because there's a message in there that I'm trying to teach you something. But you want to, if you tell them, well, you know what, there's better stuff out there, it's more advanced, it's blah, 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 blah. I went and implemented something else, I did this. You're missing why I did it. And that's, and then the other thing is, if you go and do it and it doesn't meet my expectations, then I'm going to say, well, why did I bother telling you to do something? You obviously didn't listen to me. You went off and did something else. And now you have to back up and do the same thing. So in some cases, we've had PhD students who said, oh, the professor was told me I wasn't spending enough time running experiments. So I went and took my sleeping bag, went in the lab and did experiments for 3 days. And then guess what? The professor came back and said, you didn't go in and do the right experiments. You didn't meet with me to structure them. Why would you go just run off and do something and not really give me the plan with you, the plan that we talked about? So again, you got to be structured with it and being able to come back and say, okay, this is what you asked me to do. This is what I did. This is what I understood you to want me to do. This is what I did. These are the results. So let's talk about another one. Please implement the algorithm for my paper. I found something else. I think it solves our problem better, and I didn't bother implementing yours. This is a real case that I had to deal with. Okay. And so the problem is the advisor's like, you're a new student. I asked you to do something. You didn't do it. If I wanted you to go implement the other algorithm, you should have at least talked to me about it before you just ran off and did it. And you still didn't achieve what I asked you to do. Oh, my favorite one. Please do a literature search. So here's one that says, do a literature search on AI methods for detecting cats. And then you respond with, okay, here's a bunch of links to the paper I found. And even though I say, go do a literature search, yes, you might think, well, that's a list, right? That's a list of papers. What they're really telling you is don't just go find the papers, but go read the papers, summarize the papers, come back to me and be able to tell me what was good about it, what you learned from it. My students, I'm one person. I have 12 different PhD students. There's a lot of topics out there that I'm interested in there. I don't have time to be reading every single paper that every one of my students is. I depend on them as a team to help me come up to speed quickly on the latest and greatest technologies that we need to build our foundation of our future research on. So if my students, if I say, go read a paper on quaternion neural networks, I expect them to come back and say, I found these papers. Here's, what it does. Here's how it works. They come back with a PowerPoint. They explain it to me at a high level. They go and give me the pros and the cons. And when I'm done, I'm like, okay, so I think that this looks like we want to do this. And then we agree and we talk about it. But giving a professor a link is a death sentence. Don't give us links. That's like when you interview for a job. You send an email. Here's a link to my resume. Go to my website. Go check me out. Like, no, nobody does that. So now let's talk about getting you acclimated to your climate and your campus. So if you're new to a school or program, the couple of questions, right? Find out, do you have a desk or a space for graduate students? Do you have a room? Is there a study room? Usually funded students either sit in the lab with the other students funded by that faculty member, or there's a graduate spot with desks in it and you get a specific desk that's yours. Otherwise, there's an open room and it's first come, first serve. But ask, because you don't want to go say, oh, I found a desk and I'm going to sit here, and somebody comes in and says, hey, that's my desk, out, so, and the same thing in labs. So in labs, everybody might have a dedicated space. So ask when you go in, ask your advisor, say, do I get a desk? Is there a place for me to hang out? Where do your students hang out? And then the other thing is, if most master's students don't have a desk, but find out where they do hang out. So there's might be lounges. There might be a graduate student lounge on campus. Ask these types of questions, because that's the way for you to find a good space. It might not always be the library. Not everybody hangs out at the library. Do you have a mailbox? So, if you're going to be sending and receiving stuff from students, papers, homeworks, things like that, we are a lot digital today, but you might also be getting some other correspondence. So if you have an on-campus address, make sure you know about that and how you get your mail and access to it. Interoffice mail, if you're collaborating with another lab, rather than having them mail it to you, they might just put an interoffice mail. So find out where that is. And make sure if you're guaranteed, say, oh, I have a delivery coming at 6 p.m. and the office closes at 5 and you don't have a key, you want to make sure that you use it wisely, but you also want to make sure you check it. There's nothing worse than when a faculty member says, okay, here's the homework you need to grade. I put them in your mailbox, and then I go by 3, 4, 5 days later, I still see it's in your mailbox, because I'm going to expect that those come back. I don't care when you picked them up. I expect them back to the students within a week. So that's an example of, you want to make sure if you have it, you use it and you check it. And you also want to be able to make sure that who has access to it. So if it's an open slot and there's lab reports coming in from students, you might want to collect them more often, so that you can make sure that people don't copy or steal other people's work, or if you have something important in there. If you're ever working with companies, make sure they have always have a local and a permanent address for you, not just your local campus address, because most likely these mailboxes are going to change every semester and you will have a different slot and you might move on and you don't know where that's going to be. The another big piece of advice is every department has some sort of staff administrator. Do not call them the secretary. They are not secretaries. They're called staff administrators. And they pretty much run the logistics for the department. They keep things running. They do the ordering. They help with with all the different things that are going on, supporting the faculty. Be nice to them. They're not there as your servants. They can make your life very easy, or they can make your life very hard. So, and they're not your advisor. So you can't say, well, if I take these 3 courses, will I graduate? They're not supposed to answer questions like that. They're not curriculum experts. But they also, but they are resources for you to say, well, how do I get reimbursed for this or something like that? They take care of logistics like that to help you, but they're not going to say, well, where can I get funding? Where can I do this? That's not what they're there. And the same thing about the photocopier. They're not there saying, well, here, I need this photocopy. You don't assume that they're going to do that for you. First of all, you should ask. I'm a TA for the class. Am I allowed to use that photocopier in here during class to make materials for my professor, for my faculty member? And if you go in 5 minutes before class and this faculty or people lined up to use that photocopier, they're going to look at you and say, tough, first come, first serve. And faculty can preempt you and say, you know what, faculty, sorry, you should, students should be after us. So be careful. Just, ask those questions. Why not ask them? Find out when student groups meet. So there's an IEEE. Now you've all been undergraduates, so you had an IEEE student group. You might have some other societies that you're members of. You might be Engineers Without Borders. You might have some other volunteer group that you're a member of, and you know that you did them as undergraduates. Well, IEEE and HKN, graduate students, and a lot of these, even Society of Women Engineers, graduate students are allowed. Don't let the undergraduates say, oh, we're only an undergraduate group. That is not true. That is not true. And find out who the faculty advisor is for those groups. And if somebody says, well, you can't be inducted to IEEE-HKN because we're only for undergraduates, you need to correct them. Don't believe them. Find out from the advisor or find out from one of the faculty members, because the undergraduates do not always know all the rules. And find out where they meet and go to one of those meetings and introduce yourself. And especially if there's graduate student events. So we have a graduate Society of Women Engineers. We have IEEE. We have HKN graduate students. So find out when they meet and go introduce yourself and get acclimated to them. And also on campus, there's always a graduate student, all campus graduate student organization. That's a great way to get to meet other people across the campus and get to know all the resources, as well as get to do some great social events like apple picking. The other thing I'm going to mention is take time to get organized. I'm the worst person for this, but some skills. What kind of skills was that? Well, the first thing, if you come in my lab, I'm going to make you do a lot of reading and in summarizing of papers. And then I'm going to say, so which paper was it that we read, that we saw this? And you want to be able to go back and say, oh, it was this one, and give me the complete citation, not just, oh, it was some IEEE paper. I'm like, yeah, that's useful for me, right? IEEE has like 60 societies. Which one was it? So if you use tools like EndNote, that's the one my students use, it helps you maintain a library so that you have a library of all the papers you've read. And as you're developing your thesis, believe me, it's going to be super useful to have this, because whenever you're doing a document, the references to me are the nightmare part, right? You spend more time, you insert something, oh, the references are out of order. And at the end, your references, which one was number 3? Yeah, I don't remember which one it was. This keeps them locked in so that you don't have to go mental with your references. And then later on, you can always just insert a paper and say, okay, which paper was it that does, AI for cats? And you can, look it up for you, and you'll say, there's a list of the 3 ones for the cats. It's this one, and just hit the button. So, and the library offered these things. So your library and librarians are there to help you. Most people don't want to bother the librarian, but they're bored if you don't. So go bother your librarian. Everybody wants everybody to code. I don't care what major you are. You got to learn some sort of coding. And today, the schools, they teach a class. in like data structures, they use the language to demonstrate the data structures, but very few classes will say, I'm teaching you how to program in this language. And graduates, especially in graduate school, because they expect you already have these skills. But everybody comes from different backgrounds. So you might know Visual Basic, you might know C++, you know, you might just know MATLAB. So pick a language. If you look and you see all the courses require coding in Python, go take a Python course. You know, I'm not talking like on your campus. Either the library will have a short course on it. IEEE has tons of courses on it. Do something online, but get yourself up to speed. So when you want to spend your time learning the concepts in your courses, not struggling with the code that's not part of the course. So I'll give you an example. When I write a grant proposal, I do battle with Microsoft Word, you know, trying to get the formatting, I'm trying to get the pictures centered. That's not me writing the grant. That's not me putting the brains and the knowledge in there. That's me fighting with an application. You don't want to waste your time doing that. That's horrible. Managing your time courses. I really wanted to take one of these. I know my institution offers them, but it talks about how to organize yourself and how to organize your tasks to do this, and using maybe some tools to do it to help you. That's one of the biggest things I see students complain about is, I just don't have enough time and I don't know how to do this. And I said, well, what did you do this morning? Well, I overslept. Oh yeah. So, you know, and sometimes when we're more busy, we get more done. And then we're like, oh, I'm going to give up this because, you know, I'm going to drop this course because it'll give me more time to allocate on these other things. Guess what? You don't allocate more time. You just fill it up. That time fills up with other stuff. Okay. Nobody should pay for tutoring. You have something called an academic resource center in your institution, and they all offer tutoring and writing coaches or something similar. You should find that. I had a student come to me, graduate student come to me a few semesters ago and say, oh, I'm paying $35 an hour for the student to tutor me. I said, what are you talking about? We have it for free. So, you know, be careful, because there's people out there say, yeah, I'll tutor you. Here's how much I charge. Find out what's, you know, if the people that are tutors on your campus are most likely people who already took the course you're in. So they're going to be better at it, and they're paid to do it. The other thing is, if you're looking for a job, the Academic Resource Center, even though it's not in your department, they're desperate for engineering and technical tutoring, because those are the most hard to find subjects to find tutors in. All right, so let's talk about accommodations. Accommodations are anything like, you know, maybe you need extra time in tests. Maybe you're dyslexic and need special, you know, room. Maybe you have hearing impaired. You know, like for instance, and one of the things like now with masks, right? We all have to wear masks in class. Well, if you're hearing impaired and you can't see the professor's mouth, or you have a hearing problem, they can give you accommodations. They can give you special earphones that amplify the professor. They can give you special closed captioning, things like that. Make sure you do this and ask early. Don't be ashamed to ask for it. That's what these are there for. We want you to be successful. Be careful though, because if you wait and you day before the exam, you go and say, professor, I need extra time. I need distraction-free testing. They're going to say, no, you didn't come to me early enough. And then if you take the test and bomb and say, well, it's because there was so much noise and I needed distraction-free testing, they can't be granted retroactively. So do not be ashamed to advocate for what you need. Now I want to talk about juggling your work versus juggling work. So your work is very different than what you need to do for your research, right? So some of you are going to be teaching assistants. You're going to love tutoring. You're going to love teaching undergraduates. But when somebody sees you in the hall, they see you. So if somebody sees me on the street, they don't, right? Sometimes they look at me like, well, how do I know her? I was like, oh, wait, she's the dean. They see you always as that person. So if you have a teaching assistant, whether you're out at a club, whether you're running in the gym, and the gym is probably the place that they get bothered the most, is if you're on your campus gym and you're exercising, somebody's coming up to you, oh, hi, I need help. I have this bug in my program. Can you help me? Blah, 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 blah. And you've got your headphones on, you know, it's disruptive to you. So please protect your time. You have your hours, you show up for those hours. If people need something outside of that, they should go to another teaching assistant, or they should schedule an appointment with you when you are on duty. And please be careful, because if you are, like for instance, if you're going to volunteer to be an HKN tutor, carve out that time. But because the students got to know you, That doesn't mean you're always available. You're not on demand, okay? So make sure you understand that. And make sure that you are also protective of your lab, okay? So, I always say pitfall number one is not being able to say no to students who expect you to be available on demand. So students will come up to me and say, oh, I'm on my way to the bathroom. And students will stop and say, can I just ask you this, that? I'm like, go see my staff admin, make an appointment. Your lab is your sanctuary. I had one time where I had a teaching assistant and I had a class of 110 undergraduates. And every 30 seconds, that door in the lab was banging because somebody was open and poking their head and looking for the TA, banging the door. It's very disruptive. It's really disruptive. So please don't be a teaching assistant in your lab. That's your sanctuary. That's where you get your work done. You want to make sure, and your lab mates won't get anything done. So what ends up happening is the students are like, I can't do any work in this lab because the door's there. And so we said, well, we'll lock it. And they locked it. And then everybody's banging on the door. That's even more disruptive. We had a phone in the lab. And somebody keep calling and ringing and ringing and ringing. It was just like, finally, they took the phone off the hook. It's just horrible environment. We don't want that. So, make your policies known to your undergraduates that, this is not the place I do TAing. And sometimes we even put a sign on the door. There's no TAing going on in here. Please make an appointment. And some students will still ignore that. Say, I don't care. It's due in 5 minutes. I need it. You can't be successful if you're frustrated and you can't get your work done. So again, have safe space for your TAing. All right, here's my favorite question. Hi, nice to meet you. Can you fund me? I want to be a research assistant. Will you fund me? And that's like the most common thing that professors get. Or we get an email. Dear professor, and then the font size is changed so I can see that it's a form letter. I need funding. And I can tell you the truth that a lot of faculty, like I write back to people, I do write back to them. And sometimes I'll say, it's obvious that you didn't even research me because you totally got the topic area that I research off. And if you plan on being successful, here's some advice, try at least looking at whatever. But a lot of faculty, if they write something back to you that sounds promising, like, oh yeah, go ahead and apply. Yeah, that doesn't mean they're married to you. That doesn't mean they're gonna engage with you like all the time. So you can't keep pestering them. Say, oh well, you heard from me, and now I'm gonna sink my claws in you. So some faculty have said to me, I won't respond to any prospective student inquiries anymore because any word of kindness is like opening a door for them to think that they have a relationship with me and that I'm gonna fund them. And then when I don't get funded or they don't get in, they are sending me these nasty emails. So. But if you're accepted and you're already in the program and you're looking for a research type of projects and things like that, think about being on the other side. Okay, so I just gave you some examples about being on the other side. So first of all, why am I going to fund somebody I don't even know? Now you can give me a resume, that's a piece of paper, and we all know that resumes can be embellished, but I don't even know you, right? Now I work a lot with IEEE. The students that I'm going to fund are the ones that I've met through IEEE conferences, HKN, that other faculty rave about or know, students that are of my former faculty, or students that my students tell me, I met this guy, he's fabulous, he'd be a great addition to the lab. So it's very rare that a faculty member is just going to pull you from the pile of millions of resumes, unless they have lots of money and then nobody else is saying yes for you. But if you're there, how do you make an impression? I've been at your institution for a year and I want you to work for you. And I said, well, that's great. What classes have you ever taken one of my classes? No. Do you know image processing? No. All right. So why am I going to pick you over somebody who took my class, has the skills I need, and that I already know? Right. So it's about building rapport. So if you get in, you take a professor's class, that's one of the best ways to get in, to get to know them and to be able to get research money. And then the other thing is, I'd like to see how you interact with others. If I have a wonderful team, we all share ideas, we share with, with co-authors and everything, they're on my patents. If somebody comes in the lab and gives them a hard time, or they say, Professor, we don't like this person, they're rude, they're competitive and, nasty, disrespectful, treat individuals, don't value diversity, make off-color comments about individuals, or cultures or religion, anything offensive, You won't be in my lab. You will not be in my lab. So, and faculty are looking for this because I can't be productive unless my team works together. And there's been instances as the dean where I've had people telling me, I'm not working on this project because I have to work with this individual. And I have to go back and say, you don't really have a choice because that professor's paying you to work on this specific project. And they were like, I didn't know that. And it makes this tension that the professor doesn't want to be in the middle. And usually they'll say, okay, somebody's got to go because I'm not dealing with this. So you want to avoid those situations, and you want to be good people. Okay, and we expect honesty. So that's the other one too, is I really, IEEE-HKN, Ada Kappa, scholarship, attitude, character, right? And for me, the character is more important than the scholarship, but shh, don't know that. So there are, go to class, get to know the research, when, take their classes, invest times in being present in your classes and in the seminar. I saw another cartoon that says, why do people go to seminars? It's just to show off if they ask a question. But faculty knows who's showing up because, to these seminars, because a lot of faculty don't want to show up, and we do if they're interesting topics. But go to class. A lot of people try to do stuff remotely, and if it's offered remotely, it's fine. Turn on your camera, ask questions, raise your hand, if you can't attend, but somebody who's fully remote and I never saw having the camera on versus somebody who shows up or somebody who's asking questions, they're going to have a higher value to me because I have a more knowledge of them. Interact with your professors in class, ask questions. Don't text in class. That drives us nuts. It's offensive to us. And sometimes people are like, well, I got all the stuff going on. It's offensive to your professor. And believe me, if you're rude to your professor, you are not getting a job in that lab. So other options, yes, you can get hourly teaching assistants. So if you're in computer science, they can't find enough TAs, so usually they'll pay you hourly. You can get research internships. Companies or sometimes we even offer independent studies for credit. So instead of getting money, you can get credit for doing a project towards your graduation requirements. The tutoring, that's a sweet gig through your institution's academic resource center. Those are all, and then, there's always the on-campus catering and all those other jobs, but first try the things that make sense, in your discipline. Sometimes I ask students, well, what do you really want? Craft your own proposal. So if you have a plan for a research project that I might find interesting and for independent study, I find these fascinating. So, you could read some of my papers and say, you know what, you did this and this, but I was wondering, have you ever applied it to conservation of elephants? And I was like, no, I haven't. Guess what? We have a project now with the Tufts Vet School on the conservation of elephants. So things like that, that's one way. Go to the lab, make friends and talk to the students in their labs. So if they're in your classes or you see them around or hanging out, ask them, say, hey, I saw you just published a paper with, Dean Panetta. Can you talk about your research? Can I come in and see this $153,000 drone, underwater drone you just bought? I'd like to see that. How did you get this? What are you doing with it? Simple questions like that. And again, I'm going to this IEEE conference. You're going to be there? I'm going to the IEEE Student Leadership Conference. Anybody else going? Guess what? You're making some contacts. So talk about what the research you'd like to do. Sometimes professors come and I give them a plethora of ideas, but it's nice when a student comes and says, I'm interested in this. Because if you come to me just looking for money and I say, well, I have this project and you're really not interested, it's going to come up because you're going to get in and say, well, I really want to do this. So if you really want to do this, then tell me that's what you really want to do. And we'll talk if we have opportunities to do it.
We have a couple questions in the Q&A.
Oh, we do. Oh, questions. I love questions. How often should we expect to meet with a faculty advisor? How to stop being asked to help on so many projects and ask for focus? How to define authorship before involving projects? How do we get help from an advisor who's not available much? The best way for packaging our projects and make it impactful. All right. And then the second one, how to thrive in a lab where everybody from a certain country talk their language all the time when they enforce it. Oh my goodness, these are great questions. Let's talk about the first one. How often should you meet with your faculty? So in another slide that I'm going to be talking about, let's see if I go here. If I go to my next one, what's going on here? Come here. We talked about that. We talked about that. We talked about that. Is that a repeat? There we go. Okay, we'll talk about this. So the question, about how often. So if your advisor, like for me, I only have 12 PhD students. Some, other faculty might have 50. So everybody wants to work with the most famous professor in the world. Well, the most famous professors with the millions of dollars of research funding have lots of postdocs under them. And there's a tiered structure. So you might not even get to your professor all the time. You might have to go through a postdoc. So this is a problem, is when you're picking a lab, you might be with the most famous professor, but yes, access to that person is important. So when how often should we expect to meet the faculty advisor? Well, if you're doing research, I would say once, no more than, don't let more than 2 weeks go at a time. I meet with mine at least once a week, but 2 weeks is usually the max if you're doing research. If you're a teaching assistant, you should be meeting with your advisor multiple times a week. Once to pick up the assignments or talk to them about stuff, or to go over the lecture or whatever it is, go over the lab. And then when you hand things back. So when you're a teaching assistant, you should be connecting with that person multiple times during the week. And you might even find out if you have to go to that class. Sometimes the faculty expect you to go to the class. They won't even give you the solutions. They expect you to derive the solutions yourself, which is like, oh, great, I'm taking the class again. So, that's one. But if your advisor, if you're in an MS program and you're just taking classes and you're not doing research, you might, until you start doing your research or just having discussions about what the research is, it might be once a month. So it really depends on where you're going. Now, I have a slide on talking about advising versus mentoring. There's an advisor who just selects your courses. You might just see them once a semester when you're picking your courses, and that might be it. That's up to you, really, though. So you might have a minimum of once a semester. The other one is, how do you stop being asked to help on so many projects and ask for focus? Part of that is what we have another session called the individual development plan. So that's where you need to clarify with, I've joined this team, my goals are this. I learned this from this project. I did annotation for this AI. I developed the algorithm over here. I understand that you're giving me, this is great experience that you're giving me in all these different projects, but I'm just wondering, do you have a path plan to pull all these pieces together so that I get my own ownership of my own project? That's the way to put it. Because I usually sample my students on all different things so they learn different algorithms, and then I pull it together. So you might ask them, say, well, what's the long-term goal for my research? Do I have a project? What piece do you see me responsible for? Will it be, and sometimes I have a big flow chart of the system. And so if you look at all these different projects, you can say, okay, well, I contributed, actually do a map. I did this, I did that, here's the skills I picked up from here, here's the skills I picked up from here, here's the applications I did. Are you expecting me to pull all these together and put a proposal to you, or do you have a plan for me? That's one way to ask them. They're not going to stop asking you for help. They might ask you, you might say, they're going to wait for you to say, you're overloaded. So make sure that you try to say, well, and negotiate a little bit. Say, okay, well, I've got these 3 other things going. Which one's a priority? How about that? I need to know which one is the priority. And sometimes, well, it should only take you 2 hours to do this. Well, that's them if they know it, you're learning it. So ask about priorities, ask about, and actually, when you do a tabular form, like an Excel sheet, to say, here's all the things I've done, or a visual flow diagram of here's all the things I've done. Sometimes the faculty will step back and say, oh, wow, I didn't realize that, we had you on so many different projects. So give it back to them, show them everything you've done. That's how I'd answer that question. How should we get help from an advisor who's not available much to find the best way of packaging a project and make it impactful? That's where, if you have other faculty, committee members, or even other students in the lab, sometimes the postdocs will be useful for that. Some postdocs are hands off. They're like, nope, I'm just doing what I have to do, get out of my face, and they're not good mentors at all. But I think that, if your advice is not available, sometimes you can, I would even utilize sometimes your network, your IEEE network, your IEEE-HKN network. So, one of the things that we're asking our grad students tonight is if there's stuff that you wish, so maybe there's like a peer-to-peer mentoring type of thing. So sometimes if there's a peer-to-peer mentoring and you ask as somebody who's been around longer, like, well, how did you do it? The advisor's not available. And the other thing too is go ahead and schedule. Like if you ask your advisor, can I meet with you this week? Can I meet with you this week? I'm booked out 2 weeks in advance. So I apologize to students, I'm booked out 2 weeks in advance. But what will happen is if you can do a group session, maybe you get to, you know, a bunch of your IEEE people or a bunch of graduate students and say, let's get together and just pitch projects and help each other out. That's really one of the greatest ways to do it. And you'll be so surprised, you'll make so many friends doing it. The other one is, you know, where everybody talks the language. Just this happened to me. I'd go to my lab and everybody was from another country. And when I got in there, they say, oh, Karen, so you have to speak English. And it was just like, I was the only American, so I was the only one whose English was the first, the primary language. But it's hard to integrate and speak to others. Sometimes I would just, you know, be in their face. I wouldn't, and what I mean by that is going up and saying, oh, are you guys talking about this or that? And if they say no, and then they resume chatting in their own language, you know, it would just be helpful, you know, and I would remind the professor, it would be helpful if, you know, folks would try to, when I'm in the lab, to speak English, as well as for everybody, because everybody wants a job. And if you're not practicing your English, and sometimes students will come in and they'll start talking in their own in front of me in their own language to explain stuff to each other. I'm like, no, you got to learn how to explain it in the language here. I know you're going to struggle with it, but it's better you struggle here than when you go try to find a job. So remind your advisor about speaking the language. As a matter of fact, I know an institution got in trouble because they wrote in all different languages. They posted a sign in the lounge saying, in this space, please do not speak Chinese, Arabic, Spanish, whatever. And they listed in the different languages, they said, please only speak English. But then they had a translation for like 5 different languages. And the students that spoke those languages were very offended because they said, look at they're going after us saying, you know, they wrote in Arabic, don't speak English. They wrote in Chinese, don't speak English, only speak English. So they took offense to that. So, you know, what we're really saying is, you know, if you want full maximum potential for interaction, people should speak that language. And it's not up to you to police it, but it is up to your faculty member in your department. I would go to the department chair if your advisor doesn't help and say, look, or your lab mate. And I would bring it up with your advisor and say, it makes it uncomfortable for me that I can't interact with them because they're not speaking English. And I'd even go out and I just interrupt the conversation and say, hey, you know, is it okay if I join in the conversation, you know, to help just to find out what you guys are doing or what you're doing? And usually they'll if they give you a hard time and they look at each other like, oh, this is a private conversation, then, you know, that just tells you kind of people you're working with. And besides, someday you might be interviewing them. And that's another thing I want you to remember is just because they're your peers now, you might be their boss someday, and you won't forget that. The other one, what do I do if an advisor doesn't respond to a meeting request for long periods of time unexpectedly? You know what? I get emails, and I got to be honest, I get 500 emails a day. Sometimes stuff gets buried. And what I say is, if you don't hear from me within 24 hours, resend it. And, you know, and if there's a staff administrator or a department administrator, you know, you can say, ask, when is this professor's office hours? Every faculty member has to have office hours. So if they have office hours, you know that they're going to be in their office. You can show up at that time and say, you know, I wanted to have a meeting with you. And then they'll say, well, I'm booked for the office hours. You need to make an appointment. So, okay, how about we make an appointment now? Okay. You have to be proactive about getting your space. And that's something important to do. And don't forget, if your advisor, you can't get, if your advisor is really your advisor in charge of your thesis and you can't get that from them, other faculty can advise you and other faculty can be your mentors. You don't need that person. Sometimes people will get jealous and say, wait, what are we talking to my student? You poaching my student? No, they came to me for advice. Guess what? You know, they can do that. So, and even find your IEEE or your HKN faculty advisor. That's another one. If you're a member of any student organization, there's an advisor for that. All right, moving on. Let's talk a little bit about academics. So choosing courses is really important. You know, we're so interdisciplinary today, but I want to make sure that you understand that you should really be picking courses that are going to help you advance your research, your degree, and that are going to get you acclimated with your peers and your lab. So please make sure that your first, and especially if you take a PhD qualifier, you need to be, they might say you need your PhD qualifier in 1 year. You really need to focus on that first before you move on. You want to build friends. You got to build a cohort. Nobody does this alone. If you think you're going to do this degree by yourself, you're going to fail, because you're going to be stressed, you're going to be miserable, and you're going to hate engineering, you're going to hate the world, and you're going to, gain 1,000 million pounds, and you're going to look like you're 1,000 years old by the time you graduate. That's not a healthy experiment. We have enough stress already, right? And it's a good way to find opportunities, because again, oh, you just did an internship at, my favorite company. How did you get that? How is it working there? Oh, you just made a friend who can give you that recommendation to get in there. Go to the department seminars. You don't have to go to all of them. Find the ones that actually interest you. Go talk to the speakers. They're from outside. They're from companies that can hire you. They go talk to them. If they don't have to know you like intimately, but you can always then refer, hey, I met you at a seminar. I went to a conference and I invite students back to give talks at my institution. And then when they're interviewing for professor positions or industry positions, it's a good thing to have in your resume, but then they can all say, hey, I met you when I was at this. That means something. Learn about collaboration. So a lot of students come from international countries and they're like, oh, I didn't know copying off the internet was wrong. I didn't know using last year's solutions were wrong. Well, guess what? I'm the dean. I have to bounce them out of the program. And that kills me when I have to. It's the lousiest part of my job. But in school, if you work on team projects, you cite them just like you do in the real world, right? Oh, I worked on this team with X, Y, and Z. So please, and you write their name on it. And if you go and you cite somebody's work or you take something verbatim, you cite it, okay? I would rather see somebody cite it and have them come back and say, well, you know what, you cited it, but you took too much out of it. I really want to see more, but you won't get thrown out of school for it. Jobs, ooh, that's the most important. So in the COVID era, you got to learn some, like how to elbow shake or something like that, and look at them in the eye. I don't know how you folks have to do Zoom interviews. Oh my God, where they take over your screen and make you program. I get sick, stressed just thinking about it. But, being smiling and having a good presentation, being able to not look like you're stiff and you might be scared to death, which we all are. Try very hard to be personable and try to not look like like you'd rather be squished with a rock. And before you go, don't go to your dream job without having your resume looked at. So every university has career centers. Go, have them beat up your resume. Don't go to come, like faculty, students will come to me and say, oh, can you help me write a resume? And I was like, well, what have you got? Well, I haven't started. Can you give me an outline? No. You're getting a degree. You should know how to get resources. Go to a career center, figure it out, and then take a look at some good samples. Usually that's what I do is I give my cover letters of my students, say, hey, this is my, best cover letter I've ever seen. And I save them because some of them are just so amazing. I'm like, wow, if I ever look for a job, I'm going to plagiarize this one. Take notes from your meeting with the Career Center and meet with your advisor, because your advisor might know somebody. So you say, I'm looking for an internship this summer, and be careful because your advisor might say, no, you're staying around doing research. There's another communication thing. Is it okay if I go and find an internship this summer? Or are you expecting me to be in the lab and doing research? Usually for some PhD students, they'll say that. Master students, I'm like, go get a job quick, as much experience as you can, and see if they have any leads for you. Where do most of your students go that graduate from your group? And companies are, and so here's another one that I always see is students, a lot of students are, let's say, I'm a biomedical student, I want to go to medical school. And I go on, I interview with you, and you say, well, I'm just looking for some internship because I really want to go to medical school, blah, blah, blah. Well, that company's thinking about hiring you because they're testing you out and thinking of giving you a full-time position if you do a good job. So the minute you say, well, I'm really not interested, I just want to go to medical school, I'm just looking for something for summer, you just threw yourself right out of the pool. So you want to make pretend I will scrub toilets with my toothbrush. That's how excited I am about this job. You want them to see you're excited and that you really want it, because if you do really want it and you want to stay at the company after you graduate, you've got to convey that to them and not just say, well, what do you do? What does your company do? It's like, you should know before you apply to my company what do we do. You should understand some of the jobs, and don't go and say, oh, I want to do diagnostics. And I was like, oh, really? What do you know about diagnostics? And then find out, well, I just asked my friend who just came out of the interview and I just pulled it out of my head. All right. That's the example like pitfall that happens. Now, references. You want to get references for jobs. Be careful because when somebody asked me for a reference and they addressed me as Mrs. Karen Panetta. Well, first of all, Mrs. Panetta was my mom, God rest her soul. My title's wrong. I'm not an assistant professor. I'm a full professor. I'm the dean. I'm not in computer science. I'm an adjunct of computer science, but I am in the School of Engineering. So when somebody addresses me incorrectly, or dear Mr. Panetta, which is even worse, you know, it tells me that you really don't care about me. You really didn't even bother to take the time. So what I usually say is make sure, even when you're doing a job search or looking for a graduate program, I would rather see you spend the time on 5 or 6 professors and schools you really want to work with versus doing these blanket, broad, you know, just throw the stuff out there and see who responds to you, because you'll have much better results the other way. So if somebody will ask me, I took the course, you know, well, what, I don't really know you. Yeah, you got an A in my course, but you never interacted with me. You don't want somebody who's just going to write a letter. They got an A in your course. I can look at your transcript and tell that. So you want somebody who knows you. Do they have to be, you know, someone right now? It could be somebody from IEEE. It could be somebody you've worked with on a project for HKN. It could be somebody that you've worked on or with some community project. Ask them for permission first so they know it's coming. Because sometimes people say, oh, we want a reference for somebody who's applying to my job. I'm like, who? You know, and then the question is, what I say to the students is, you should at least send me your CV and tell me what the job is for so I can hype you up. Because if I say, oh yeah, he's a great programmer, no, and they say, yeah, this is a hardware job, I just blew it for you. So you want to give them some information and you want to give them contact details. And then somebody who would say, you know, what are your career goals? What do you want to do? So that's why you give me a little information about what you do. And someone you've worked with. When I see an application come in for graduate school, that for a PhD program and there's no instructors from the master's level and everything is way back from undergraduate, that sets off red flags and saying, okay, this person had a tough time. What's going on? You know, what's going on with these? And then and vague letters usually are not helpful. It's just like, this reference tells me nothing. So we're looking for insightful letters that are meaningful. Give them plenty of notice. So I always tell students, give me plenty of notice. I have a saying that says, you know, someone's lack of planning is not my emergency. So you can't go and say, oh, this is due tomorrow. This is due in 2 days. Can you do it for me? You know, what am I going to say? It has great planning and management and organization skills. Guess what? I can't. So make sure that you give them plenty of notice, provide them your CV and some bullet points that you hope that they'll emphasize. So help me to write the letter for you, because that's a nice one. Usually what I do is I cut and paste your stuff in and I embellish around it. That makes my job way easier. And I'll ask you, you know, pester me. I'll say, what's the deadline? Give them a list of the deadlines. And then what ends up happening is I will say, you know what, the week before, you don't be intimidated. Say, you know, I haven't heard from you. I haven't heard from you. Are you okay? Do you need anything else from me? Are we good? And then the other thing, I see a lot of letters come in that say, you know, president of blah, blah, blah. Joe Schmo is a nice person. Yeah, well, guess what? That tells me nothing. So, you know, we want something with sustenance in it. So I'd rather have somebody I don't know who writes a glowing letter about you versus then some famous person that can write 2 lines. So this is an example, and you know, this is the last thing I want to close with because it's super important. Everybody deals with stress. Everybody deals with stress. And when to worry. So as the dean, remember I talked about my percentages and my statistics that I see. There's nothing wrong with you. COVID has wreaked havoc on all of us. So you know when something isn't right with you. You can't drag yourself to class. You dread senior faculty missions. You wish you were squished by a rock. You wish they were squished by a rock. And you keep saying, well, I'll get back on track. It's just a funk I'm in. I'll just, you know, I'll skip a couple of classes. I'll watch the tapes I'll watch the videos on Zoom. And then you think you're going to do like a weekend and catch up. And guess what? Before you know it, you're so far behind, you just feel buried. So I always say, you know, schools really have mental health built in, and they're building up these resources, especially after COVID. Get help. Go talk to somebody, even if it's not your advisor. And we don't need to know. But we'll know because every student that comes to me, remember I talked about the percentages, most of the students that I see fail out of graduate school is they're going along, they're doing fine, and I see a step function. And they'll start failing classes. They'll start not getting incompletes. They'll start, everything starts falling apart. And now, and then they'll say, oh, they gotta go. Well, when I see that step function, that tells me it's not because my students are stupid. It's not because they're lazy. Something else is going on. So sometimes faculty say, well, we'll give them an incomplete. And then they think that you're gonna make up the new old class with the new classes that you're gonna take next semester. And I know better. It's like, no, unless you're getting help, nothing's getting better. So I help you. So get help. Go talk to somebody. They have all these therapists. 95% of students that I've seen fail in graduate programs is because they allow their mental health and stress challenges to go until it's too late. We can't help you and if you go to the point of no return and the stuff has really gone beyond it. If you know something's not right, get help. Talk to somebody. A lot of schools now are even doing peer therapy sessions to just to find out you are not alone in this. You aren't the only one experiencing this. And it's nothing to be ashamed of. You know, I lost both of my parents within 8 weeks this past winter. It's devastating. And it's hard. I have a child with life-threatening illnesses. It's hard. But you know what? I talk about it, I deal with it, and I always have something positive to look forward to. So don't ever be afraid or ashamed of where you are or what help you need. Ask for it. And if you don't know who to ask, if your advisor can't help you, there's always somebody at your institution that can, or you can write to me and I'll get you that help. Go work out, go for a walk, find peer support groups. Sometimes just getting yourself out of the lab and seeing sunshine helps. And you know, this is the one I showed you, like it says, check it out, I painted a picture on the wall. Right, unfortunately, one of my labs is in a windowless lab room. And I know that if my students have to be there, especially when it's beautiful out, I want them to go outside. We'll have meetings outside. We'll do impromptu things to have a life. Go dancing, go do something. I try to do Zumba with the dean. I'll do anything to get my students out there to enjoy and just get away from the everyday. We know you need it. Everybody needs it. So don't be afraid to ask for it. The last thing, we have another session on mentoring and advising, you know, but be careful because you get assigned a faculty member to help you choose classes. That does not mean that they're going to be a mentor. Your research advisor might be a mentor. If you're lucky, you get one in both, but sometimes you need more. Sometimes you'll take a class with somebody and they'll be a great mentor and you'll still have your research advisor. So, you know, the more people in your corner, the better. So be careful. You can have as many people as you want. And then the question you asked me before about access to your advisor versus a postdoc, ask up front, how often will I get to meet with you? You know, how often do I get to meet with my thing? And you also want to make sure if this person's postdoc's a gatekeeper, you want to make sure that the information is being conveyed. Write down what you think you did, write down your progress. And as long as you have a running record of that, no matter what the postdoc says, whether they're wrong, you'll always say, well, these are the messages. Here's what happened. Here's my progress. Here's what he asked me to do. He gave it to me in writing, or they gave it to me in writing. Because that's another one is the student comes in and says, I did exactly what the postdoc said. And then the professor said, I haven't been doing any work. I don't get it. And you expect the postdoc to advocate for you. Guess what? That might not be the case if you don't have that if you don't have it documented. Team atmosphere, work together. It's important. You know, if they're not speaking the language, say, I really want to work together. We're a great team. We could be really successful together. You know, please, I know it's uncomfortable for you to speak English, but I really want to get to know you and get to help it. And I can help everybody out. And it make me feel so much better if we could all just work together. So I know it's tough, but do you think when I'm around, you can try to teach English, or you can teach me some of your words and, you know, in your language and start that way. Connect with your thesis committee. Don't send them your thesis and say, okay, see you, you know, next week at my thesis. Connect with them because they're not going to tell you your stuff is deficient. They'll wait till you to get in there and present, and then you'll be like, yep, sorry, you don't graduate. Or your pre-proposal. Don't do it. Be on their case. Make meetings with them individually, because if you ask them, what do you see deficient? What do you see is, you know, blah, blah, blah. And if they don't answer you then, and they've read your stuff, and then they get in a thesis committee and that's it, well, this is deficient, is that deficient? Then you can say, well, wait a minute, I just met with you 2 weeks ago and you said this was fine. You know, put them on the spot. It'll put them on the spot, or they have to come forward. Okay. Don't just send a draft and wait. That's like, because they're not going to read it till the night before or 2 days before. So either you go to a presentation and you summarize it for them and you show them the highlights along with the document, again, making it easy for them. So no news is not good news. Silence is not golden. It just means they haven't read your stuff. And it just means that when they get in there and they do read it, they feel that they have license to attack you. Don't give it to them. Don't give them that license. So schedule meetings long before with your thesis committee. I got out of my PhD because I was meeting regularly with my thesis committee members, and my advisor finally went to them and said, well, she's pushing on me to graduate. And they're like, she was ready a year ago. And that's when he was like, oh, you get to go. And so it was my committee that ended up influencing my advisor to finally let me out. So I know I talked quite a bit. I wanted to get through a lot of things. We'll have more grad labs. If there's things that you want to hear more about or more in depth on, write to us so we know, so we can make future grad labs to help you. So I'll just look one more time in the chat and see if there's anything else. I don't see any other questions, but please do let us know if there's other sessions you'd like, topics, because I'm assuming that everybody in this session was a graduate student. We have another session on how to become a graduate student or looking to become a graduate student. But if you're a PhD student and you want to talk about finding a research topic, we'll be working on that. And anything that you wish that you had heard or that you want to hear more in depth on, I will give you the honest inside scoop. So from all of us here at Tufts University School of Engineering, IEEE, Eta Kappa Nu, and the Society for Systems Managed Cybernetics from IEEE. Thank you for joining us and have a great, successful, healthy future. Bye, everybody.